This is the business of Africa. If it's about Africa, then it's our business, bringing big and small business issues right to your doorstep. The private sector is an inextricable piece of the economic growth puzzle of a nation. The sector complements and does not ideally compete with the government in creating jobs, contributing to infrastructure and social development, as well as advancing innovation. DHL Group is among those leading this charge. In the third quarter of 2025, the company announced a €300 million planned investment in Sub-Saharan Africa. This in response to market dynamics and trade opportunities, as the continent is poised to supply minerals critical to the green energy transition, among others. How well poised is the continent to catch this opportunity, and what is the state of our supply chains? Intra-Africa trade currently sits below 20%, and this investment by DHL signals a commitment to contribute towards changing that, all the while providing access to markets. We get into the business of moving goods on the continent. We are joined by Hennie Heymans. He is the CEO of DHL Sub-Saharan Africa. Hennie, thank you very much for your time on the Business of Africa podcast. Now, you hold the firm view that Africa is at a pivotal moment in its trade journey. How so?
Thank you, Dudu. And yes, I certainly do. I think if you look at the macro picture globally at the moment, global trade is recalibrating. We all know what's happening in the States, and we also know what's happened, a couple of days ago, 10% up to 15%. Right. The reality of that is that global trade is shifting. Those sands are shifting, and Africa is in a fantastic position. Why do I say that? Well, two things. Firstly, we're also suffering from the aid Band-Aid that got ripped off, and we're in a position where everybody is looking at different growth markets. So that positions Africa exceptionally well. And why do I say it? Well, extractive economies, and we know that much of what we have to offer is sought after in the world right now. By the same token, countries like China are looking for different markets. Countries like Europe are looking for different energy partners. So all in all, it bodes incredibly well for Africa. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us to kind of lift our gaze from the traditional trading partners and aid partners and actually change our approach from aid to trade. And in doing so, earn our rightful place in the world as far as macroeconomics is concerned.
As you rightfully mentioned, the move is going from aid to trade. Before we get into the planned investment that you announced last year, help us understand the realities of moving goods where you operate in the continent and trying to understand why the investment.
Yeah, Dudu, I think it's a well-discussed topic. Africa still suffers in terms of its infrastructure, and it simply doesn't have an infrastructure that supports aggressive economic growth. And you can almost divide the continent into three different buckets if you want. You've got West Africa, then you've got Central and East Africa, and then you've got Southern Africa. Southern Africa certainly is the most developed as far as infrastructure is concerned, and with that I mean both air and road, as well as border posts. East Africa is getting there really fast, but West Africa still lacks that infrastructure and that connectivity. So that's the first part to it. So our infrastructure is lacking behind, and we really, really need to focus with intent on developing that if we want to see this growth that I so firmly believe this continent is capable of. But the second part of that is also to say, well, is it trade deals that move or is it people that move? Right. And we know it's people that move. And then that plays into the opportunity that we have in terms of the Africa Free Trade Agreement. It is fundamental that we get people to move freely between countries, because that's how business deals gets done, is businessmen move from boardroom to boardroom. SMEs move from country to country, either to promote that they are selling or to go and find the raw product. So the movement of people is paramount in this growth journey that we need so desperately to embark upon.
And it's quite interesting you speak of the lack of infrastructure development in West Africa, because the movement of people is much better, for instance, compared to Southern Africa or the Southern African region, and East Africa is also quite strong. Now, the multi-year initiative will be deployed across DHL Express, DHL Global Forwarding and DHL Supply Chain to expand infrastructure, enhance service capabilities and unlock opportunities for businesses across key sectors, including e-commerce, perishables, energy and life sciences and healthcare. Help us understand this.
Yeah, Dudu, I mean, it's a great question, and I'll try my best to unpack it. I think first and foremost for us from an Express point of view, we are lucky in that we will have the biggest benefit of that 300 million investment. If I had to talk about the priorities of that investment, first and foremost, it would be around our people. It's of paramount importance that we give our people the opportunity to be part of a great organization and a great place to work. Secondly, that'll go into infrastructure that both supports the movement of goods and facilitate the growth that we are seeing in the countries, and in particular around second cities. We're seeing a lovely boom in the growth of second cities across the continent, and we want to be there and be a part of that growth journey, because you need logistics in order to grow effectively and efficiently. So a lot of the investment, or a big part of the investment, will be focused around that. And then just in terms of making sure that we are ready for the different sectors on their growth journey. You've already spoken about agriculture, so for sure, we know that's a big growth focus for Africa. We also know that life sciences, both human and animal, is a big growth opportunity for this continent. And then energy, in my opening statement, I spoke about energy and the fact that Europe is looking for different energy partners. We're seeing a fantastic boom as far as energy is concerned all around the continent. If you look at the continent all the way from the West Mauritania and Senegal, and you come all the way around the southern tip of Africa, and you go up to Mozambique and the LNG gas project that has been re-energized. And we've got to make sure that from a logistics point of view, we are ready to enable that trade. So I hope that answers the question in terms of how we will prioritize that investment that was announced.
Definitely, because I get from your answer that logistics and getting that right, you speak of needing logistics to grow efficiently. I do then wonder, how would you characterize our supply chains on the continent? Should we be looking at it from a continental view or overview, or a regional view and overview? And how would you characterize them in the work that you do?
I think my own view on that is that we've got to regionalize it. This is a big continent, and it's got a lot of complexities. But you can categorize the complexities based on the three buckets that I've explained to you a little earlier. So we can categorize in terms of what is happening and what is required in West Africa. You can do the same with Central and East, and you can do the same with Southern. Because you also need to look at the different modalities that we need. So if you look at energy, that needs a certain type of logistic infrastructure. If you look at agriculture, that requires a certain type of infrastructure from a logistical point of view. And then, of course, goods and services, which you're all pretty familiar with. So, you're talking from sea freight to air freight, you're talking about harbor infrastructure, you talk about landlocked countries. How do we facilitate trade to landlocked countries? Well, it starts with having a harbor that's efficient and operating according to certain standards. So I don't have a straight answer for you, but I don't think anything in Africa from a development point of view is as single as a 2 or 3 sentence answer. You've really got to appreciate some of the complexities that we deal with in logistics on the continent.
Absolutely. Now, the investment will include upgrading gateways, adding aviation uplift, which is something that you alluded to, and extending time definitive coverage into second cities, which is one of the 3 brackets that are emerging as demand centers under the African Continental Free Trade Area. What does that mean?
I think the key thing for me is to be able to support the growth in the SME sector. If you look at the role of SMEs globally, regionally and sub-regionally, it is immense. For a moment, picture the following. SMEs make up 90% of businesses around the world. SMEs contribute 70% of employment around the world. SMEs also contribute 70%, more or less, globally to GDP. So what it tells us is that SMEs are truly the growth engine of our economies. It is even more true in the case of Africa. Because of the high unemployment rates that we sit with, people across this continent learn from a young age to hustle for an existence. Our opportunity is to take that hustling and turn them into successful SMEs. And for that, we have to make sure that from a logistics point of view, we provide them that opportunity, that supply chain mechanism to help grow their businesses. So the SMEs, very much a focal point for us at DHL Express, and should be for all of us on the continent.
Absolutely. The informal economy, we can't even quantify it as well on the continent. Yep. Is that then where the Go Trade initiative comes in? to support
the Go Trade
SMEs?
is something I'm very passionate about. And Go Trade is just one of those programs where we use our international experience and network to help stimulate international trade through SMEs. And there are really two pillars to the program. The first one is around trade advocacy. The second one is around creating capacity. Another interesting fact, Dudu, is the fact that we know that the 4 challenge areas for SMEs are the same in the developed world as well as in the developing world. And those 4 challenges or areas of challenges are access to finance, logistics, knowledge and skills, and then, of course, ICT. So for us, the opportunity under the Go Trade program is to create ecosystems where we bring on board partners that can help address those different challenges. And then by doing so, we're absolutely enabling SMEs to grow their businesses cross-border and international. And that's how we help facilitate macroeconomic growth, not just in Africa, but actually globally.
Got you. At the time of this announcement in October 2025, it was an investment or is an investment of 300 plus million euros, and it's called a planned investment, according to the document that I'm reading at least. What does that mean? What is a planned investment?
So there are 2 things implied by planned investment. Number one is that we're very clear from a time point of view, when and where we will spend it. And then secondly, the where also denotes in what we will spend it where. So that's really what a planned investment means. But in its most simplistic form, it is a commitment to invest that sum of money into this continent to enhance our logistics ability across Sub-Saharan Africa.
And this is a multi-year initiative.
It's a multi-year investment, correct.
All right. So we're also looking in the long term as well. I guess maybe your message, more so because I hear that you are passionate about small businesses and growing them and allowing them to scale. Your message to somebody who would like to partner with DHL or a business that is listening to this and thinking, sure, I'm in this space and I would like to actually take a part. How does the process work and how do people get involved?
That's a fantastic question, Dudu. Probably the best way to get in touch is look me up on LinkedIn, drop me a note on LinkedIn, tell me that you're interested in forming a partnership with us to address those 4 areas. Here's what I'd like everybody to think about to the first part of your question. Just imagine the power we can harness as a private sector if we all take our different plans to develop this continent and the SMEs on this continent and we put it all together. The multiplying effect of that is incredible to think about, and even more incredible if you start putting some numbers to it. We've got 49 million registered SMEs on this continent, and you and I both know that there's probably an even bigger number that is never registered, and that's trading informally. Just think about how we can harness the power of that. If we put aside all of our different corporate egos and we get together for the greater good of this continent, that will fundamentally shift the movement to go from aid to trade and allow Africa to earn its rightful spot on the global stage as far as macroeconomic key indicators are concerned.
Absolutely. When it comes to compliance, more so for small businesses, how important is that for you to get your house in order, for lack of a better expression, for you to actually even be part of the bigger picture?
I often describe compliance as the oxygen to the business. And we all know, and everybody that will be listening to this podcast knows that without oxygen, we die. We cannot exist. It is no different for business. Compliance is the backbone. It's the absolute oxygen that'll secure us sustainability from a business point of view. So it's not optional. To be compliant is not optional.
It's not optional. And I do wonder, because more so maybe I'll use South Africa as an example where some in the business sector speak of regulation. We speak of these critical minerals that are needed in the world. In South Africa, for instance, the criticism is that the regulation is stifling. We are not exploring enough. And so I do wonder, with the different markets that you operate in, has regulation been an issue in terms of ease of doing business?
That should be an enormous focus area for us to do, because you're absolutely right. Certain markets and certain governments within our African market is a lot more pro-business than what others are. But I think that is starting to change. Certainly within my interactions and my travels across the region, I receive a far warmer reception from governments across the continent that are willing to engage with the private sector to say, help us understand from your experience how we can create a better environment that'll create better access and quicker turnaround time, so we can be a part of this economic growth. And just one more point that I want to make is, we spoke about compliance, which typically for most people will start going back to the ESG scenario. I wish I had the ability to change that formula around and say for Africa, it should be GSE.
Okay.
Let's start with the governance element first. Let's get that in place. And then we can start with the rest of the formula. But generally, when you speak to people and we talk about ESG, we all get stuck on the E part of it. And do yourself a favor, go and read an article, go and attend a conversation. The passion is high and it's palpable when you start talking about the E. But by the time you get to the G, the room has run out of energy. Maybe our opportunity is to say, why don't we start talking about the G first? And why don't we get the G in place? And then we worry about the S, and then we worry about the E. But that's my view on the world and on my wish list.
That is so interesting, right? And I'm leaning on agreeing with you. And maybe we can expand on that. Why is governance important?
As I said earlier on, that is not optional. If we want to build a continent that has sustainable growth and that is creating a far more robust middle class, we have to do it in a way that will go from generation to generation. The only way to do that is to embed compliance in everything that you do. So that G, the governance element, if that is the bedrock, if that is the foundation, we have a decent shot at making this growth sustainable that can carry it from generation to generation.
Good governance is super important, as Professor Mervyn King will tell you. Thank you so much, Hennie, for your time on the Business of Africa podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to impress on our listeners before we say goodbye?
I think this is our opportunity to do. Shame on us if we don't stand up and grab the opportunity with both hands. The recalibration that we see on a macro level is absolutely creating an opportunity for Africa. But no one is going to do it for us. It's up to us to do it for ourselves.
And that's it. Hennie Heymans is the Chief Executive Officer of DHL Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you very much for tuning into the Business of Africa podcast, where we bring big and small business issues right to your doorstep. You'll hear from us again in the next fortnight, God willing. Bahaichu. Bula.